Hello everyone, and welcome to today's panel debate on alternate realities. My name's Zoe Mutter, and I'm editor of AV Magazine, and I'm joined by a fine panel of experts who have Badal, Dixit, McAtamney, Glenn Kelly, and Amelia Kallman. I'd just like to start by getting you each to introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about your experience with virtual, augmented, and mixed reality. We'll start with you, Badal.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Badal Dixit. I am the CEO of PearlQuest. We are a technology agency based out of Dubai, and we create interactive experiences for events, exhibitions, and marketing activations. The interesting thing is my career started, and in fact, the company was started as a digital out-of-home company where we were focusing more on interactive digital signage and digital out-of-home. But I've seen the transition, and we have, over the last 6 years, completely changed the business model into immersive media, AR, VR, XR technologies. So that's how it's been.
Okay.
Hello everyone, I'm Vincent McAtamney. My company is Vintec Immersive. It's a play on the word virtual, immersive and new technologies, got a bit of a nod to my name. What we do is build immersive content, mostly VR, AR, and of course now mixed reality as well. We focus on three sectors. So the core business is building experiential marketing content, but we also work with design visualization, construction, working with local authorities, helping them visualize town plans, etc. And also immersive training, so VR training in particular. The company is a relatively new company, but we're growing fast, and we're working in collaboration actually with other AV specialists and companies, which is why we're at ISE.
Hi, I'm Glenn Kelly. I'm head of production at the Imaginarium Studios. We are a performance capture and virtual production studio based in Ealing Studios in London. We have been doing a lot of mixed reality and VR and video games for the last 7 years, and more recently that has been predominantly VR and MR, XR type content.
Cool. I'm Amelia Kallman. I am a futurist, and I look at new technologies and their impact on the future of business as well as the future of our lives. So I do lots of speaking and writing about these. One of the things I'm kind of known for is not just looking at the potential and the opportunities, but also the risks of these new technologies individually, societally, and economically.
Okay. And if we could just begin by defining the different types of immersive technologies that are being used to extend our realities, and how does virtual, augmented, and mixed reality differ? If anyone could just define those a little bit. Would you like to begin for us?
So there are a lot of industry terms, and there's quite a lot of confusion out there for the ones who are not in the industry. But I would say now there is a generic industry term called XR, which came into being, I think, a couple of years back in Silicon Valley, where it's more like a convergence of augmented, virtual, and mixed reality. Some call it cross reality, and now pretty much everyone calls it extended reality. But now we see the convergence of AR, VR, sensors, IoT, and a little bit of blockchain and crypto technologies together. So that's why this generic industry term called XR is what is being used these days. But if you, on the surface level, if you define it, then virtual reality is where you get totally immersed into a different reality, where you wear a headset and you can't see anything else, but you're basically into another reality, immersed totally into it. Whereas augmented or mixed reality is where there is augmentation of your existing reality. So using a specific headset or specific gear, you can still see what's out there, but you have virtual objects around you.
Like another layer on top
of objects. So yeah, that's how I'd call it.
Does anyone else have any other definitions?
Well, I like to differentiate between augmented and mixed reality. Some people don't. Some people just call it augmented reality, and I really think that it's because Microsoft coined mixed reality. But the way I differentiate it is that augmented overlays the 2D digital onto the physical, where mixed reality is the 3D 360-degree holograms into the physical. And why I think I'm leaning towards AR and MR these days is because it allows us to stay in our natural environment. So we can still look each other in the eye, have a conversation. We're less likely to get motion sickness or to trip over anything.
Perfect. And which scenarios are you seeing each type of simulated experience being used for? Which are they best suited to? Not sure if you want to take that one.
I mentioned earlier one of the sectors we focus on is training. So, for instance, with training and immersive training, I've tended to find that virtual reality VR is easily the most effective in that. Now, whether that will always be the case, of course, that's subject to change. But for the moment, that's the technology that really does allow you to take anyone from an engineer to an astronaut to a doctor to a surgeon and really put them in a true one-to-one scale of the space that they need to be in without them being in that physical place, without them being in a hospital ward or an airport, and really being able to give them both task-based scenarios or simulations, the what-if scenarios. So for me, I've used virtual reality more in that space,
right.
And I think possibly some of the others might say that things like augmented and mixed realities tend to be used in more the experiential marketing areas because they can reach a much wider audience via our smartphones, of course.
Yeah. And do you have anything to add to that, Glenn?
Yeah, well, I suppose for me, we've done some work with some training being the like performance capture for training VR experiences, and I agree that seems to be the thing that has really taken off. We're getting more and more inquiries for that. I see that though as being because the tech is advanced enough that it is possible to throw it on people. I would see that the mixed reality headsets will take over in the future, mainly because VR is limiting in it. Not everyone likes VR headsets and not everyone can wear them for long periods of time. Whereas MR headsets in general, it's not always true, tend to not cause the motion sickness, and that because you can still see the world around you. So I would expect that a lot of what the education stuff that is being done today on VR will be ported over to the AR sector as those develop into a more usable product, let's say that.
Right. Okay. And anything from your perspective that you're seeing?
I totally agree with training with mixed reality. The essential idea behind it is mistakes which probably can happen in the real world. And when we use a mixed reality headset which gives us some contextual information on top of your real world view, the probability of that mistake to happen reduces significantly. And that's why there's a lot of mainstream usage of mixed reality in enterprise. Like we have been doing some pilots with oil and gas. Since I come from the Middle East, there's a lot of oil and gas industry exposure there now. They are trying to see how we can eliminate mistakes which are done by the workers, by the people who are working in hazardous areas, by using mixed reality headsets like the HoloLens, and we are really awaiting the HoloLens 2, which is going to have much better features. When they get into the context of the work being carried out, and they are getting some information overlaid on, say, working on a machine or some other expensive mechanism, that really helps in making sure that that layer of training is totally gone away because they are working in context already. So that's what helps.
Yeah, you mentioned the HoloLens too. So that's the first headset that integrates artificial intelligence. And I think for me, the marriage between machine learning and AI and XR is going to be huge in the use cases and what we can do. So when it comes to large data sets, being able to analyze these in new ways, being able to visualize things, and then also using the artificial intelligence to be able to sift through all that information. So I mean, I think there's a lot new like jobs and opportunities that are going to come as a result of this, and we're going to see a lot more adoption in that respect.
Yeah. And what about other sectors, say like retail or immersive art experiences?
We've had like a lot of inquiries for mixed reality art exhibits. The limitation at the moment are the devices themselves and running them constantly with general public.
Yeah.
None of them at the moment, I would say, hold up to the everyday consumer, throw it about, throw it on their head, off you go. There is still an element of babying people along with it and it glitching out and the tech's not there. That said, there are artists working in that space already, and some of, like, I think VR sculpting and art is currently a thing, and if you are on Twitch, you can watch hours of it, and it's looking amazing. And I'm looking forward to when that becomes a little bit more mainstream. But once again, I think because it's in VR at the moment, because that tech is far enough along that is accessible to everyday people, whereas the mixed reality stuff is still very much in the hands of kind of first adopters and companies.
Yeah. And what are you finding? Did you have something to add there?
I was just going to add to that on the subject of art. I'm really pleased we've got 2 art-based immersive projects happening within the next 12 months. It's interesting. I agree the technology's perhaps not quite there from a user ability. So we're doing one that's using VR and one that's using projection mapping as a way of enhancing an existing art campaign and art exhibition. The reason why they're doing that is in a similar way that a brand might use an overall campaign, and part of that campaign be an experiential marketing campaign. An artist might do an entire installation, an entire exhibition, and part of that be, let's say, a virtual reality experience, perhaps with a breakout room and a breakout area, and you get to immerse yourself within that art, which you can do either using mixed reality in time or VR for now.
Right. Okay.
So that's the experience I've had with the arts sector.
We could also have a different offshoot of immersive art, which is location-based VR experiences with art, like where traditional art galleries are transformed into VR galleries, where people actually go and visit the gallery as they would, but there's a headset kept in which they get immersed into a particular piece done by an artist. Yeah. So like many countries are really doing well in the location-based space, where they expect people to go to a particular location and experience the using that particular hardware, and whereas there are others where they expect you to download the content and try it out ourselves, which is a major challenge in adoption, because they don't have the right headsets and they don't have the right hardware. So
Yeah, I love some examples that don't use headsets at all. So, like Web AR, being able to just use your mobile phone. I think Apple AR did a really good example of that, where they took people on art tours throughout London and I think 3 other cities around the world. And now with technologies like Scape, which just got bought by Facebook for $40 million, you can actually pin different digital experiences to locations. So, in the future, when you go to a museum, outside, you have all these different layers. You can see what the museum looked like 100 years ago. You can see what the renovations are going to look like. You can look at all the people that have been there and posted their picture and pinned it there from Instagram, and you can take yours and pin it there as well. There's all kinds of new ways that's opening things up. And then like a good example too in retail was LegoWare had a completely empty white store in Covent Garden, but if you had Snapchat and you could go in and you could see all the clothes, you could see a runway show, you had celebrities talking to you, and they're going straight through to buying stuff that they're seeing in this digital experience. So it's really marrying up the e-commerce with bricks and mortars, mobile, and I guess, and digital and physical. Yeah. And then also, I was just going to add is people like the Illuminati, they're doing like domes. So you can have these immersive XR experiences without headsets at all. And it makes it a more communal experience, so you get to share in it. And I think those are also really effective and definitely something that we should be talking about with XR as well. Yeah,
so I was going to move on to that, what users are actually asking for. Is it the more communal experience that VR doesn't allow you to have? What feedback have you heard from people about the shortcomings of different types of alternative reality?
The big thing, we've been doing a lot of theatre related stuff, and the experience of theatre is about going with a group of people. It's not about being on your own. So yeah, every request for anything to do with extending a set or a stage is always the people sitting next to you must be experiencing the same thing at the same time, so that the emotional beats are all the same and they're reacting to the same thing. Yeah. So we've been finding that the requests are based around making sure that everyone gets the same experience and it's not limited. So its accessibility is a big one. Right. So phones are great for that. Like if everyone has a phone that is capable of doing it, they can all at one time. The other big thing they've been asking for is more content. These platforms will live or die on how much content is available to them. And I think several of the manufacturers have failed at the content side. They've released devices without the real what's going to hold people on this platform. Whereas this is where I think mobile phones have won that, is that a lot of people have taken what was a static app on the phone and extended it into kind of AR, and that is getting people in. So I'm seeing a bit of the request for consistency and sharing.
Yeah, do you think it works in situations like gigs? I know U2, with their tour, they had an app where you could, I think it created a waterfall effect over the crowd. Do you think it adds to it, or do you think it detracts attention sometimes from the actual production?
I think everybody's viewing their stuff through their mobiles anyways,
Yeah.
you know, so I think it adds that extra layer. And, you know, like we saw Mabel do the first vertical concert, you know, so that you can actually film it like this and it translates into Instagram and Snapchat. I think that's a huge trend that we're going to see more of. We saw, you know, Samsung's showcasing Zero, that screen that lets you go vertical, portrait to landscape, just like that. And Quibi's coming out this year in April, which is a mobile streaming app for your phone, and they're doing small, under 10-minute content series.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely a trend that's happening.
Yep.
I think from a user standpoint, the big question is, when do we get rid of the handset? When does AR come to a level where we are not holding a device in our hand and everything literally becomes a part of your reality? And that's where I think the biggest challenge with the user experience and the field of view with AR headset as well as with VR. VR headsets are bulky, they're expensive, the cheaper ones are not that good. AR is just so limited in the field of view. It's not something practically usable. Apple sooner or later will come up with their AR headset, and the vision is we get rid of devices being held in our hands and things become integrated with your existing reality. We all are just curious when it happens and what is that gap we are trying to address and how soon that becomes reality.
So is it all about ease of use and not actually noticing or
it's all
using the
about the
technology?
ease of
It's
use,
just making
definitely,
it more
yes.
invisible. And
Funny enough, both Glenn and Badal mentioned content creation there. One of the things I've found we're being asked for more, and it seems like an unusual move, but it makes absolute sense when you look at what's happening with social media, is creation both of interactive content. It's not just content, it's really got to be interactive, but also in portrait format, because so many people are tied to their phones. So that's been perhaps a sideways step that some of us didn't see coming. But I think the other thing is interactive content. So particularly for experiential marketing, when perhaps brands are trying to get their products almost into people's hands via AR, not just being able to look, but almost be able to interact with it, open it, feel it, interact with it, do things with it. That's so important. That seems to be really key to then getting people to engage with the brand and then hopefully go out and purchase or buy from it.
yeah. And just moving on to the headsets, and then what are the investment figures looking like? I know you had some stats you.
Well, in fact, they say that the AR industry is going to grow by 198 billion.
Yeah.
So, like with ARKit and AR Core, new content creation platforms, new AR headsets, the technology itself is booming a lot. So, it's still debatable on whether the figures which are anticipated versus what's really happening. We need to address that. But then, for example, PSVR, like PlayStation VR, sold almost 5 million headsets. So people are adopting to VR as a technology itself. Oculus Quest, which is the next revolution, according to at least from a developer standpoint, has almost gone to 500,000 headsets.
Right.
So I think the adoption is growing. Now it's not mainstream. It's not something as a technology which is commoditized, which is adopted by everyone, like the mobile apps or web-based apps. But we are getting there. I believe we're getting there. So.
Which hardware are you guys most excited by as well? It'd be good to get your feedback on a few you're working with.
Badal mentioned Oculus, and I think that they have to be mentioned. I think particularly their ownership by Facebook has really allowed them to drive that forward as a almost at least a mainstream product. So Quest, absolutely, that seems to be the weapon of choice we most use at the moment.
And I would add to that, Quest is standalone, untethered, totally a headset which doesn't require a PC, which is as good as I wouldn't say exactly same as the Rift, but very good in terms of the fidelity and the field of view. But at the same time, the new addition to it is the sync cable. So you can just turn the standalone Quest into a proper VR headset which can connect to your PC or your laptop, and it can still play the content which requires very high-end processing. Yeah. So I think that's a great one for developers and content creators, and see, that's pretty interesting out there.
I think the other thing to mention on both the Quest and the wired version as well is that it allows this 6 degrees of freedom, this movement within the VR space. So that's what's just taken it leap years on from the likes of the Samsungs and the cardboards that we perhaps were used to a couple of years ago. This really is a true VR room-spaced volumetric feel now.
And Glenn, what are you working with at the moment?
Yeah, HoloLens and Magic Leap are the two kind of mixed reality, spatial computing, whatever term they want to use for it, devices we've been playing with. Oculus Quest personally, yeah, I bought an Oculus Quest on launch. We've got a Valve Index on the stage.
Yep.
I'm excited for Apple's entry into the market. I'd like to see what they've been suctioning up a lot of kind of businesses that kind of are within the space, and they have a history of bringing all of those technologies together into something amazing. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the next generation of devices. I think the ones that are on the market now show so much potential. They are not, for consumers, they're not there yet for the everyday consumer, but they definitely are at a point that the next generation of them is going to be that part where I will just give it to my friends to play with. I don't think it's quite there yet, but yeah.
And you went to CES recently, didn't you? Did you see anything particularly groundbreaking in terms of headsets?
I did. I was going to say, I just wanted to add on to the VR, the Oculus Quest. The one thing to keep in mind about the 6 degrees is that that does mean that there's cameras inside your bedroom, and that data is going to Facebook. So, we will see how that ends up. They'll probably end up selling it back to us at some point and making more money off of it. As far as mixed reality headsets, I saw the Rhino X, which got me really excited because they're actually selling an entire solution for things like museums and exhibitions. So multiple headsets with a wide field of view, wireless, and they have their own kind of object tracking. And the demo I had worked. It was great, and price-wise, I think it definitely undercut some of the bigger guys in the business at the moment, so I would look out for them. With augmented reality glasses, I tried the Norm glasses, Nreal. There were a couple other ones that are trying to be the new consumer, sleek, sexy glasses. I gotta say, none of them were there yet. None of them were robust enough. I don't think any of them gave me a demo that I was very excited about, or that didn't fail halfway through, But that said, we've come a long ways, and I think it is going to be Apple who is the one who's going to break that, because and I don't think they're going to come out with it until it is the new iPod, the new iPad, the new iPhone, until there is that thirst for it. And I think we're getting there, with people wanting something new, wanting something next. Yeah, I think that's where I will leave that.
Just to add on with the Apple thing, my only worry with Apple being the breakthrough one is how enclosed their ecosystem is, which is at the moment a problem with this market. Is it, as a developer, it can be hard to get into them, get access to developer kits. Apple has a history of not being great with that, or charging, which means the most really good experiences I've had in VR recently have been made by people in their rooms. It sounds weird, I know, but it's like little developers, and they're the forming of an idea. They're not perfect. So I'm hoping Apple, when they do release, I'm hoping it's a little bit more open than their current ecosystem. I don't think it will be.
Well, actually, you just reminded me, too, because Facebook are said to be making augmented reality glasses. Samsung showcased theirs. They only just showed it on a model. They didn't actually show them working or anything. But it is interesting that they're all going into that direction. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to add was Panasonic debuted their virtual reality headset, and it weighed 150 grams, so it was really light. It looks steampunky. It actually looks kind of cool. And you could just imagine how much easier where it would be at a conference to be like, put this pair of glasses on, you know? And they say that they're not planning to manufacture them, but they've definitely set a new standard just by being there of what we need to expect and demand from the virtual reality market.
So that is one of the main limitations, is how cumbersome and heavy they are, really.
But having said that, I would definitely agree with the mainstream adoption when it comes to the consumer level, and I think that's what investors are also looking at. If you come up with a great piece of hardware or some great content-related technology, their first question would be, how can this go into, how can this cross that stage or cross that chasm where it goes into the the early adopters to the next level. Yeah. But having said that, I think from an enterprise perspective, there are some great pieces of hardware that like the Vuzix Blade, and where you only focus on specific applications. So it'll be industry, manufacturing, healthcare, where we don't really care about the field of view, where we don't really care about the fidelity. We only care about how it can be used in a specific application. And there's a different evolution in some hardware which is specific to industries. And I think that's great for enterprise, and that's great for a lot of businesses out there, a lot of startups who are only focused at making sure that the workplace transforms, or there's more health and safety within the industry. Yeah. So
I would agree with that. The Vuzix, the M4000 that just came out. Yeah. If companies use that, they can actually get reductions in their insurance because of how advanced the technology is, and there are no blind spots and that kind of thing. So there are extra incentives for people to be using these.
What about the clarity of the display as well? How realistic do you think it is at the moment? Are there still shortcomings in that area?
You're not going to be tricked into thinking you're in a room. Like they're good. As soon as you move your head, I think the illusion breaks that you're in a different space. Enough that like you're not going to put a headset on someone and they're going to immediately kind of believe they're somewhere else. That said, the immersiveness of headsets, within a minute or so, you kind of forget that you're in another room. You end up taking the headset off after half an hour and finding you're 2 inches from a wall. They're good. Then the tech isn't at a level that is, it's not 8K screens in front of your face at 120 FPS type thing. That said, it's good enough for right now, as in people should be using it already. What
about the limitations in terms of how long you can actually wear it for? I know in the past, obviously, there's been some nausea-inducing effects, but can you wear it for longer now without that happening, would you say?
Well, sorry.
A lot of that as well comes down to how the content is steered and manoeuvred. Yeah. So I mean, in the early days, the classic VR experience was what we call an on-rails experience. So people would put the headset on and they'd start moving, and everyone was feeling motion sick. The brain knows when you're putting your step forward or when you're moving around. So we sort of very quickly learned that you need to be in control of teleporting and moving around within VR. Glenn mentioned frame rates and things like this as well. That's really, really important that we're not picking up very obvious lag and flickers, and by and large, I would agree, it's good enough at the moment. It's going to get better, but it's good enough. But I think a lot of this comes down, as we've said earlier, to the content creation and the sort of narrative and the idea behind it. Yeah. That really drives how long you can then wear it. Yeah, so if it's a good experience, I mean, I've wore a headset for a few hours before, probably too long, but a few hours, yeah.
To add to that, we're still discovering the language of VR in terms of transitions and movement. We've definitely got a basis at the moment, but I've been trying out a few demos recently for projects we're working on that have a lot of movement in them and haven't been triggering motion sickness with me. So there's definitely things we're learning as we're creating, which is exciting. The ones that kind of throw you around, I think that's always a fun experience. I think we've probably all had it where you get given an experience and it starts off and it lurches or it lags and you end up being like, whoop, nope. maybe later, because you know it's just you're just gonna be motion sick. I made my flatmate sick with the International Space Station one, the weightless one. She put it on for about 5 seconds and then ripped it off and vomited.
Oh, okay.
I think the important point here is also the bulkiness of the headset, because with the vertigo and the motion sickness, it's also how much time can I hold something on my head. Like I play Audio Shield and I play Beat Saber a lot at home, but then sometimes I go and bang into furniture. But after a point of time, I realize that this is just so heavy. I'm loving it. I'm totally immersed in it. But how much more time can I spend in this? So the bulkiness does really matter a lot.
Yeah.
But having said that, for enterprise or for training applications, if we are making trainings which are, say, only for 15 minutes, and that take away your significant training budget, generally you got to fly in your employees. If you're a 10,000 people organization and you got to fly in thousands of people to a specific place and give them training, arrange for the accommodation, and if the same thing can be done with a 30-minute or a 15-minute experience, which is well done, very immersive, and that learning environment is replicated, then why not? So it's all about the content, as I think we again drill down to how good the content is created and how immersive it is.
Yeah, and what about the process of creating the content? What challenges are you guys facing that are involved with that? I don't know who wants to take that one. Yeah.
I think I'd say what's so important before anybody even starts putting any form of video editing skills in is that the narrative. Now, whether it's a creative narrative, if it's perhaps a experiential type thing, even the narrative if it's a training experience, what happens, why, what's the user journey, that's really so important to get right. And that means then that the makeup of an immersive content team is perhaps a little different to perhaps a typical makeup of an AV company or even makeup of an IT programming company. You can have more creatives in there, you can have more user journey or people with user journey and user experience knowledge. That's really important. Yeah. And then honestly you're then down to good practice within video editing skills. Some of us are going to use Unity, some are going to use Unreal Engine. There's pros and cons, benefits between the two. I think we sort of touched on it earlier that the resolution and frame rate of the technology is kind of the bit that's holding it back at the moment. Fast renders and real-time rendering and even live VR streams you were speaking about earlier are kind of now possible and are becoming possible from a more cost-effective budget as well. But none of that works if the experience doesn't make sense. There's got to be a creative narrative that really drives it.
Yeah, the big one for us is storytelling. So I think the number of meetings that start with, we want to use this tech, and we're like, cool, go away and come back when you've got a story that will work on that. Like, if it's all about just using that piece of technology, then you're already kind of failed. Narrative is massively important. The other thing that's struggling right now is budgets. I would love for the industry to be funded to a level that the content that's being created could be made to its best. The budgets, at the moment, brands are about the only ones putting in proper money, right. And then training, we've found, has been like they'll invest in these experiences. Right. But for everyday projects and for kind of your things for festivals, the budgets are very limited, and that's often can be great. Don't get me wrong; it means that you scale back and you focus on the core, but it would be lovely if the money behind the industry would, and people like Apple maybe will fund some really great pieces. So money is a limiting factor at the moment.
Also, I believe the industry is not really well versed with how this works. They kind of compared this to video or mainstream media. They still don't understand that immersive technologies are a step above the rest. They think making changes, amendments to a project is as easy as cutting, pasting images on a website or on a video, just adding another clip and making it happen. Whereas in VR, we are possibly looking at something much more. We are looking at multiple dimensions and a very good narrative and a storyboard behind it. So it's the customer education, it's the client education about how these technologies work matters a lot. And I totally agree with them about the budgets, because they think that it's as easy as changing some part of a video. But it's not, because when we look at an immersive environment, creating another new 3D environment is a lot of effort. It's a lot of man hours which go into that. So that's a challenge of making clients understand how this works. So that definitely is.
And audio is obviously an important part of creating an overall immersive experience. What's important to remember or consider when you're doing that, when you're choosing what kit you're using or techniques to create the sonic experience as well?
Sure. I first got interested in audio because I was being let down from the audio experience. I was having these great visuals and stuff, but I was finding when the sound is flat, you just think like I'm being taken out of the experience. So I got one of the editors I work with to kind of let me go and do some research and really start to investigate this. And that said, probably within the last year, I have seen the audio industry really try catching up, and a lot new kind of immersive audio experiences. And I really, it's really something that adds so much to it. And we saw at CES, Sony came out with 3 new 360-degree reality. One's a speaker, one's earphones, and then one's a sound bar. And once you start to listen to music and stuff in 360 in ambisonics, like you'll never want to listen to flat sound again. I honestly think like our children and grandchildren are going to be like, I can't believe you listen to flat sounds like for so long, Yeah.
The one for me, it's actually something that Magic Leap hit upon really well in Tenandi. The sound in that. That was the first time I've ever had a headset on and sound has triggered a physical reaction. I reached out, touched something, the sound hit, and I pulled my hand back. And that was the first time I was like, oh, okay, spatial audio is definitely something that's going to form part of this. Very much from the film world, audio is always kind of the redheaded stepchild. It is always last to be thought of. It's always forgotten. And in VR experiences and AR experiences, I would say it is more important than visuals. If the sound is terrible, you will kind of get over that experience very quick. If the sound is amazing and the visuals are very basic, you will play that experience out. And the spatializing of audio, I think, is also important, and thinking about that from the beginning. What is the sound experience I want the user to have? And that requires work very early on, not once you've done the filming, once you've done the capturing. You have to be thinking about that stuff very early. It's something that productions often don't, and that is across the board video and these new mediums. And we have been guilty of it in the past. Don't get me wrong.
I think audio and binaural audio spatial sound is very important, and it's very important even from the developer standpoint. To make, so I think projects like the Bose SDK is a great leap, because then it's allowing Unity developers to easily create experiences with spatial sound. So I think if even the content creators start thinking about this seriously, then it kind of blends together with the audio visual experience. So I think Bose has taken a great step by creating the Unity SDK. So.
I'll give a quick shout out to Usimo. They're doing a live demo that's just over there. I absolutely recommend you trying it out. They did, he spoke at the XR Summit on Tuesday and showed a video of what they did at the Museum of Communications, and the exhibition was Sound of Silence. And what they were able to do with spatial audio was, I mean, you even got it just from watching the video, was astounding.
Yeah, we'll definitely check that out.
I should also say something that we're excited about, the Grinning Man, the show I talked about earlier on today, the theatre. What we're looking forward to is mixing real-world sound within a space with the kind of mixed reality. So you're not only is the space you're in hooked up for spatial audio, but your device is feeding to that to tell you. Right. So there's an interesting mix of... Earphones are never going to quite give you the same sound as, say, like a massive sub beneath a stage. So it's the blending of those two worlds, the physical and the digital world. That's super exciting, and in the sound world, that could be amazing because Bose, Sennheiser, all of them have some amazing kit coming out.
I was gonna say in automobiles at CES, you were seeing speakerless cars that only use the vibration. I thought that was really cool. I've never seen that before.
Wow. And then what about the sense of touch as well? I know you touched on that earlier. The haptic technology. You saw some interesting things at CES again.
Yeah. I love haptics. I'm obsessed with it since about 2013.
It works well with virtual reality then.
Well,
That's
it
where
just
really
tricks your brain that much more. It adds that sense of touch and feeling, and your brain gets that much more immersed in thinking that it's a real thing. I mean, my ultimate favorite is still Ultra Leap. So it used to be Ultra Haptics. Now they've acquired Leap Motion. This allows you to feel virtual objects, shapes, textures in midair, so you don't have that extra friction of having to put on a wearable. I think they're fantastic, and we're starting to see them integrated into cars, again, like that. But my favorite from CES was ThermoReal by a company called Tegway, and they take thermoflexible material and integrate it into headsets, gloves, and armbands so you can feel temperature inside virtual reality. It blew me away. Like, I can't talk about it without smiling. Like, it surprised me. It takes a lot to kind of like get my attention these days, and I wasn't expecting it, and I loved it.
Yeah. And have you been experimenting with that as well at the Imaginarium studios?
We have had the guys from the Tesla suit in, and we played with that. We tortured a couple of employees. It's very cool. The immersion you get with it, with a VR headset and the suits themselves. Yeah, I think that it will be a thing. There's some health concerns I have for it. They will be personal because they have to contact skin at the moment. I'm sure that will change. But they're fantastic and they're fun as well. They make video games really fun, and you think you're in Ready Player One. But from a training perspective, I can see haptics being quite useful for feedback. If you do something wrong, getting an impact enough to know, oh, I shouldn't do that, will be great.
The Ultra Haptics, in a way, I think that is a solution to some of these the health issues that we might be having. Being able to get that confirmation, because what they found is that you react 80% better if you get that brain confirmation. So you don't actually, you can be touching midair, but if it feels like you're pressing a button or turning a dial, your brain gets happy and it says, okay, I have activated something. And if we're doing all this stuff with gesture, we're not actually fulfilling our brain chemistry if we're not getting confirmation back to the brain.
I think the other thing I've noticed is the VR experiences that you go to. Some of the best ones do build in physical and digital mixes, so buttons and levers, and the ones where you do go pick up a gun and, oh, it's an actual gun I can feel, or it's a big lever that I pull. In mixed reality, in virtual reality, it's big, it's shiny, it's got cables and electricity. In reality, it's a piece of wood, a broomstick with a broomstick on top. That stuff is really great as well. So it can be as simple as integrating those sort of things in as well.
And then what about mixed reality disrupting the wider AV industry? How do you see it have an impact on next year's ISE?
Well, I'm not sure next year, but in the years to come for sure. It's, I think, already, I mean, we as a company changed how we used to operate, and I personally see a lot of potential there. But I think when AR really goes mainstream, things are going to change dramatically. So there probably won't be any need for outdoor media. If my glasses can detect where I'm looking, then I don't need outdoor billboards. I don't need those jumbotrons and high-res 1 mm pixel pitch LEDs, because I can just see whatever I want in high-res. At the same time, we already see some things changing. There are concerts which are happening in VR. There's mainstream stage production getting disrupted. I think digital signage to an extent will get, we'll start getting contextual messaging within your virtual worlds. So education is getting transformed totally. So a lot of exhibitors here are focused at education, but now VR in education is big. So if a lot of your learning experiences are getting immersive and you don't really in the future need that traditional classroom infrastructure, then the AV industry has to, start thinking about what they should be doing. So,
then in terms of the corporate world as well, do you see it having more of an impact in the corporate world of AV and in that sector? You think it will also?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, it kind of falls into the same segment. If you look at where audiovisual technologies are implemented in the corporate world, they with the rise of augmented reality, I think you will start having boardroom meetings, conferences, a lot of your general meetings in virtual worlds. I myself attended one a few days back where we get these conferences in a virtual space. So this is becoming more and more popular, and I think the corporate world will also catch up soon. So I think that's going to be transformative. A
bit further down the line than
maybe in the next, I don't know if Amelia would be perfect to put that number to it, but maybe 4 years or 5 years, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's hard to put a number to it. I mean, we can do it today, but it's the quality of it,
yes.
So I think 5G is going to play a part of that. For me, from a broadcast media perspective, I really love what White Light's doing with the Disguise platform. So being able to take this white cube, and they have another name for it that is slipping my mind at the moment, but being able to take a space that's small and then use mixed reality on screens.
Is
and
that the
stuff.
smart stage, I think?
Yes, it's the smart stage. Yeah, so to be able to increase the space infinitely, so you can really transport people, and then using it in broadcast, so you can have the graphs pop up, and somebody might just be in a white space, but visually you're getting all these extra layers, and it seems a lot more interactive. It seems a lot more engaging. So I really like that. And then I just think capturing things from a volumetric point of view. Like, I know that the new stadiums are being built with the sensors so that we can start to broadcast in holograms eventually. I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, the Rugby World Cup in Japan just did that. Yes, that was very cool to see actually happening in real time. Yeah. I was very impressed with that. From my perspective, I think the disruption's going to be a little like an education sector. We're excited about the accessibility this tech brings. So you could wheel a box load of headsets into a school in a remote community and give them access to the British Museum. Photogrammetry, the ability and volumetric capture gives the ability to take objects that are behind glass at the moment and really get up and personal with them in a way that you can't do even if you go and see them today. Yeah. So I think disruption-wise, it's going to affect how future generations learn things, how they interact with content, especially. We're talking about theatre at the moment and plays. Not only will they get to see a screen that has a video recording of it. No, they'll be able to walk around amongst the actors as they're doing the play and really learn about it. So I think from a AV perspective, it will hopefully in the future replace things like screens in classrooms. It'll extend them.
I'm going to be interested to see how, at the moment, it's the AV industry and the immersive tech industry. We're even speaking about them as two different entities, but they're definitely beginning to collaborate. I'm particularly interested in how potentially everywhere is a screen, and where there's a screen at the moment. 99.9% of the digital signage screens we see out there, as good as the content is, it's passive content. We just spoon-fed it. I think it's going to be really interesting when some of the immersive technology skills come in and make that content interactive, personalised to some of the audiences and the demographics and the users, and then therefore potentially every screen we look at can be an information point, a touch point, a learning point. I think that's going to really come together when AV companies and immersive tech companies begin to really work together and harmonise both skill sets.
Fantastic. Right, I think we're running a bit short on time, so we did have some visuals to show, but I just want to make sure that people's questions are answered. So if we could just check first if anyone has any questions. I think, quite a lot. So do we have a catch box or mic anywhere? Oh, it's there.
Oh, here, you throw it. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of everyone. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Ooh.
Everyone can hear me? Oh, good. All right. Yeah, actually, one area that you tangentially discussed a little bit, but no one else did, is building architecture in AEC. I work for an MEP firm. I'm an AV consultant for that firm, but we've already actually there's a program we use called the Wild VR, and we were able to export Revit models and then collaborate with our architectural clients in VR in the cloud. And so we've already had. And we're building a new building, and we've already had in our conference room, in virtual conference room, our first video conference in VR. And so the Wild's doing some great things. And I just wanted to mention that the AEC industry has already really taken off with this, both AR and VR, and then also taking AR to the community and get their buy-in on what this new object that's going to be in their neighborhood looks like, and how they feel about it, and how's this going. The quality of life is going to change. So I think there's some great things happening already there. And I think also the other thing is, I'm getting a lot more demand for VR immersive spaces, caves for schools. A lot of schools are wanting to do VR lessons. So it's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective in the film industry, VR is definitely, Jon Favreau has publicly come out with The Lion King. They did a lot of virtual scouting. It's now, you know, they're making sets in the same way they do architectural models, and then going in with the DOP and the director and the producers and starting to scout those months in advance. That is there. It's being used behind the scenes. The Mandalorian recently released a bunch of photos of their virtual production sets, lots of VR, lots of mixed reality going on in that, and in-camera stuff. That is where it will disrupt in my particular industry, and is already disrupting. Virtual production toolkits and volumes are the norm now.
Yeah, and that's what you were discussing in your presentation earlier, so recommend everyone watches that online afterwards. And did you have a question as well? Yeah,
yeah, I've just been handed the box. I didn't catch it, so I know it's cheating slightly. Coming back to AR, it seems like most of the applications so far that we've seen have been in a demonstration capacity, or certainly enterprise space, right? And it seems like we're waiting on the big players, the Apple, Samsung, to bring out a consumer-driven one for it to get any kind of consumer adoption. But 6 years ago, when Google came out with the Google Glass, the problem with that wasn't the content. It wasn't unlimited of content. There was a big social backlash. So I wondered whether you could speak on whether we think we've learned anything in that time, and why this time it's going to be different to when Google came out. Yeah.
That's a really good question. I don't think we were ready for Google Glass. I don't think they necessarily marketed it in the right way. And they were ugly, let's just face it, like they were really ugly. But I do think that we have spent enough time on our mobiles, and I had somebody at a conference say to me that their 14-year-old son had to have like some kind of like neck procedure because he was looking down at his phone so much. I think as humans, like we all recognize that, you know, this might not be a good thing for us to be doing this all the time. And I see moving into a glasses scenario where it's in front of your eyes and you can turn it on and off when you want, as an evolution that could be positive for humans and human interaction, in that it's a heads up, eyes open, hands-free experience. And we just kind of like can augment or overlay when we want to, how we want to. So yeah, I mean, I hope that because we have kind of come through more of a natural evolution to get to that point, that it will start to be more adopted from a consumer point of view, in addition to enterprise. That's my opinion.
No, Google Glass, unfortunately, it was hideous. It really were not. They didn't blend in. I think it was missing the point of what augmenting. You should be able to adapt your augmented reality to yourself. So yeah, maybe you don't want your directions here. Like I personally using MR stuff at the moment, if I've got screens, I want the ability for them to be permanently in a spot, and then when I want to look at them. Whereas I think Google Glass was a little bit too forcing you to do it their way, kind of there. And they learned. I think we needed Google Glass because that taught a lot of lessons about how not to do it. And we're going to have more of those. Every single manufacturer at the moment is learning lessons of things not to do. I think VR, prime example for VR is the cables. Like, yeah, they had to have a cable. It would have been nice if they'd thought about the twisting and the connection of those before releasing devices, you know, because everyone ended up getting wrapped up in your own cable, ripping it out of your computer or destroying your video card, as I have done. It's one of those things. The mistakes in the industry will lead us to better the industry. So there's going to be a ton of them. It wouldn't surprise me if Apple is already testing stuff in the background, and for this reason, exactly this reason, that you have to make a lot of mistakes before you get to the end result.
And I don't think Apple's going to come out with it until the market is ready, until they've done that research and people are hungry for it. And I personally can feel that hunger building within people.
I think it's the same with the HoloLens 2 also. We've been waiting for it since last September, but I think that's where they're stuck to make sure it goes to...
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the comfort level, wasn't it? It was literally the first HoloLens was a great step, but the overall comfort just wasn't there. So that's what they improved upon.
Right, right.
That said, I tried it in November, and it left a line across my forehead for 24 hours.
Wow.
I had to give a speech with a line across my forehead.
Were there any more? Have we got time for any more?
Quick one.
Can't actually see.
Oh.
Yeah, go on. I have another one.
Victor, an integrator, quick one to all of you. As we are on this journey to a time where we go to an exhibition and it's we have this AR device that navigates us to a multi-layered environment, to a time when we will simply call this a reality because we will always wear this shell to something that intertwines both the digital and the physical world. What do you think is critical in this journey to make it one where it benefits humans rather than exploits them in any way?
We were speaking about that just earlier, actually, before we came on stage. We were speaking about the whole ethics side to this, and just because we can doesn't always mean we should, and it kind of ties in with the last question as well. I think certainly society, culture, law, politics, all of those things are going to have an influence on this. I mean, we were speaking about holograms as a for instance. Who owns that hologram? Who owns your face, your voice? Who owns your message? That's never really been an issue before, because if an actor has put themselves forward, it's been them endorsing it. So there is a whole society, you're absolutely right, whole cultural issue here. I like to think that because we've learned from things like Google Glass and we've learned how not to do things, cameras in devices near public places, schools, etc. We know now what's acceptable and what's not. We know that whilst interactive screens can see it, we can see them, they can see us as well. There are so many political issues behind these things, but I like to think that humankind is close to solving these things, and actually these things are being solved as the technology is growing exponentially as well. So I look forward to the time when you, as you say, we'll have an augmented layer.
So
here.
I'm an optimist as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The ethics will definitely be quicker than the legislation that goes along with it. So you were saying about Facebook being in your bedroom. If you've got one of their headsets, they're basically recording you 24/7. I think it's going to be the ethics are what will drive the way the device manufacturers behave quicker than legislation will. That said, there is definitely some privacy legislation that's going to need to be put in place about where your data from these devices that are in your home, in your bedroom. Not only are they recording you, they are scanning your space as well, so they have a map of your house. There's a lot of stuff that's going to need to catch up. The fun part of it for me is when will it become like normal? When I don't think about it, when we're not having panel debates like this about it because it is so normal.
I'm Andrei. I'm actually working in VR, XR industry, and this is my first time at ISE this year. And I just wonder if there is any sense of urgency among industry leaders regarding these upcoming changes, because we saw cases of Kodak and Nokia disappearing just by change in of technology. They just become irrelevant to the mainstream. So is there a sense of urgency to innovate for industry leaders in AV industry?
Well, I think it's probably in every space when you see technology as a whole, right? I mean, this is something which this is my opinion, but if you look at blockchain, if you look at IoT, if you look at AR, VR, and compare it to other industries, it's all causing that disruption. It's more like a telescopic exponential growth, and the way the fast-paced growth is definitely looking at disrupting many industries much faster than we think. So that sense of urgency, not just in the AV, but I think it's pretty much everywhere. So I think, yeah, the more people are aware of how this transition is taking place, it's all about keeping yourself in line with that. So that's just my personal view.
Thank you.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. We didn't get to show the images or video, but hope it's been useful for everyone, and thank you for joining us, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.